Lamar Jackson is the real deal and looks to be the favorite to bring home the school's first Heisman Trophy. Jackson was the third player in FBS history to record 30 pass TDs and rush for 20 more. The other two players, Cam Newton and Stephen A's friend, Timmy Tebow, went on to win the Heisman. Max Kellerman, you've said that Jackson has won the Heisman 6 different times this season. Do you still feel he should win it?
A big Lamar Jackson fan. I was really rooting for him. And I saw where people were, the answer is no. He won it 6 times. He lost it like twice. And at the end of the year, yeah.
What? After all, you've been bugging me for months. That we don't even need to talk about the Heisman, and he's won it 5 times over. And what?
He'll get it. He's still going to get it. He just wouldn't have my vote.
I don't care where he gets that. I'm asking you. You're going to sit here on national television after 5 months of telling us that we don't even need to talk about it. He's got the Heisman. What? What? Oh, my life. Go ahead, Max. Go ahead, buddy. Go ahead, man. Take your time. Explain this one. Take your time. The floor is yours.
When the facts change, I change my opinion. What do you do, sir? To quote Keynes, look, he did. He won it 5 or 6 times. I was rooting for him to do it. I didn't like the fact that I would read and hear people, the Geno Smith. Why? Because Geno had this incredible first half and a terrible second half, and it looked like almost 2 different seasons. Like, what do you see in Geno Smith and Lamar Jackson? But he pulled a little mini Geno at the end of the season. He really did. He went from just amazing, so much better than everyone else, to ultimately, that's not a playoff team. And you can't say it's because of his play, but his poor play at the end of the season didn't help matters. If I had a vote for the Heisman, I'd give it to Jonathan Allen, the defensive lineman on Alabama. The defensive player of the year on the best defense, the best player, and they never give it to a defensive player. I don't know why. Why not? Why not give it to a defensive player? Do people believe defense wins championships, or are we just all paying it lip service? He was the best defensive player in the... Let me rephrase. He's the best college football player, period, right now. Why isn't... And he's on the best team. Why isn't that the Heisman?
Well, first of all, Max Kellerman, the Alabama defense, period, is so elite. It can make most average defensive linemen look stout because they give you all the time in the world to get to the quarterback because they locking down receivers. That's number one. That's just a little point that I throw out there. I don't know if it has an impact, but I'm throwing it out there. The secondary is so elite that ultimately the defense overall is so elite that you can't pin down. You can't focus on one individual because they got studs all over the place. Paul Feinbaum has said this might be the greatest defense you've ever seen in college football, and you're giving me one guy on their defensive line. Good luck with that. Number 2, Deshaun Watson, listen, the Deshaun Watson, major props to him for this year. I can appreciate the fact that he threw for damn near 600 yards against Pittsburgh, but he did throw the ball 70 times. He threw three interceptions in a couple of games as well, including against Louisville, even though he had 5 touchdowns in that game. It's no question in my mind Lamar Jackson's got to get this. I don't like the loss to Kentucky. He threw 3 interceptions in that game too, by the way, but they dropped 38. They got punked and smacked around by Houston collectively. He wasn't protected. Dudes weren't getting open. But we saw what he did against Clemson and everybody else. He is clearly the Heisman Trophy. There's nothing to talk about here. You stop it.
I'll be happy for him when he gets it, but my vote will go to Allen. And if you're looking for a quarterback, Jake Brown in Washington, 40 touchdowns, like 7 interceptions, had a great season, best team west of the Mississippi. That's another candidate to me that's not being discussed.
Sorry to cut you off. Stephen A., I need you to save some of that passion because when we come back, we wrap the show with our final installment of Final Take for the first week here. Don't miss Stephen A.'s closing remarks, always strong. Never know what he's going to say when First Take rolls on. Giants fullback Nikita Whitlock's home was robbed on Tuesday night. And Whitlock told WCBS TV that burglars scrawled items that included a swastika, the letters KKK, and the phrase, "Go back to Africa," in Trump spelled out on the walls. Whitlock's teammate Victor Cruz had this to say about the incident.
There's a certain mindset of a person or of people that follow Donald Trump. If you listen to anything that he says, if you listen to the comments that he's made about women, or the comments he's made about minorities, or the comments he's made about, people of that he feels are somewhat of lesser value. They haven't been positive. For someone to vandalize someone's house and write Trump's name or whatever they wrote on the walls is just proving that exact fact that I'm saying, that people that may follow him aren't necessarily the most positive people in our communities.
Max, is Victor Cruz right?
Yep. Of course he is. Look, I know, forgive me for those who come to sports to escape the real world. I get that. I'm sympathetic to that idea. And as a consumer of sports and sports talk, sometimes when this stuff goes on, as a consumer, I'm like, okay, I just want to escape and talk about the game. But here's the intersection of sports and life and real life, and in this case, politics. Fact of the matter is that Donald Trump was endorsed by the Ku Klux Klan. That's a fact. I'm not making that up. And that there was an appeal to white nationalists. How else can you say these things? And that this is not the first time that something like this has happened since the election, and some reference to Trump was made, Trump country, Trump's America. And to Donald Trump's credit, he did, in a nationally televised broadcast, at one point say it should stop. That's terrible. But a couple things need to happen. Either he needs to do that every time something like this becomes public information, or if the idea is this is happening so much that he couldn't possibly, then he needs to address that too, doesn't he? I agree with Victor Cruz.
I don't disagree with a single word that you just articulated, Max. You're right. But I'm not going to stop there. See, the only issue that I have with what Victor Cruz said is that it implies that this stuff came about because of Trump's rhetoric and his willingness to appeal to that base. I would argue that clearly it existed long before Trump ever decided to run for the presidency. And it certainly was put on display when we had President Barack Obama inaugurated in 2008. We saw an elected official scream "You lie," very, very disrespectful towards our president. If I remember correctly, that elected official was from South Carolina. We saw and heard our first lady and the first family compared to apes and beyond. We saw a president highly intelligent, highly accomplished, earned what he had achieved, just throwing away to kind of stereotypes, other folks in America tried to throw in his direction, just bulldozed right through them, and they still came at him with similar rhetoric. And so my point in saying all of that is to say, I think it's a mistake for folks to sit up there and act like, oh, Trump did this. He certainly wasn't as responsible as we would like a presidential candidate to be in terms of the rhetoric that he was spewing and what it ultimately assisted in further inciting. But let's not act like it did not exist until he started running for the presidency. This stuff has been going on for a long time. It certainly went on against our president. And the fact is that it has and always will continue to happen. And it's foolhardy to believe that because Trump is the president now, now these folks are coming out they've been out. If anything, he might have made them feel a little bit more comfortable about it, but they've always been there and they've always been conducting themselves that way. It's just that it's a bit more conspicuous now than it was in the past.
Yeah, it's an ugly America, an ugly side of America that we're seeing. And by the way, in terms of emboldening that sort of thing or fomenting the kind of anti-Obama stuff based on things other than the merit, based on race, which was something I thought at the time, maybe this is being overstated. Clearly it wasn't. And Donald Trump, of course, was a major booster of the birther movement against Obama, which he later denied or kind of denied, questioning the birth certificate, et cetera. I would say that what we're seeing is there's a term revanchist, which means you want to take back stuff that you lost. And clearly, he's not president yet, by the way, Stephen A. He's president-elect, appealed to that idea with racist white people who seem to want to take back gains made during the civil rights movement, or at least are angry about it, or maybe angry about Obama. I don't know. I don't want this to turn into a political show at the moment. But Victor Cruz pointed something out which is undeniably true. And hopefully the president-elect will continue, as he did the one time, to, in strong language, denounce this kind of behavior from his supporters. Well, how do we know he's a supporter? Because he scrawled Trump after scrawling swastikas. So it's a admitted supporter. And the president-elect should in strong language, let everyone know.
Just coming out and giving strong language is not enough. He needs to be more active, not just with his words, but with his actions in denouncing such stuff. Because what the president-elect needs to really, really embrace and to understand that his presidency, doesn't have a snowball's chance in hell in being successful if he doesn't address this matter. Those ignorant, racist few out there very well may not epitomize everybody that voted for Trump. I refuse to believe that 60+ million people in this country, voted for Trump because they hate black people. I don't want to hear that. There are people that wanted to feed their families. There are people that did it because they didn't care about the social issues. All they cared about was the economics, and they thought change. And that, whether we agree with them or not, we can't be as irresponsible as the racist out there. And well, I'm just saying, we can't be. I just talk about how they feel. I'm not debating the economy. That's how they felt.
Sure.
What I'm saying is that we can't sit up there and be as irresponsible as those hate mongers, as those racists, in saying that anybody who voted for him, they must be like those people. There are a lot of people that don't feel the way those racists feel, and they voted for Trump for a whole different reason. And if we don't respect where they're coming from and be willing to engage in dialogue and debate based on that level, then we're no better than the racist that we're decrying right now. We have a responsibility to be that way.
True. We are better. No, that's not true. We are still better than the racists, but you're right. It is a lowering of kind of decent standards, because many of the voters were also just people susceptible to low-quality information.
Yep. And I just want to add one more thing. Obviously, at the end of the day, after a long, hard day's work, you go home to try to feel safe. And I feel so sorry for Nikita, how awful that is, that he can no longer feel safe in his own home. And I hope they find these cowards that did this and they're punished appropriately.
First Take is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. And Wendy's new spicy sriracha chicken sandwich for a limited time only.
You are so disrespectful.
He is going to fall off a cliff.
Shut the hell up.
That's not even close to my best.
They're wrong. And I don't give a damn that they agree with me or not.
It's time now for the final word as we get you set for the weekend. It is Final Take. And Stephen A., the floor is yours.
Thank you, Molly. As I sit here reflecting on the season that Cam Newton has had, I find myself a bit hesitant to come to the defense of an individual that threw for 35 touchdowns and just 10 interceptions last year, leading the Carolina Panthers to a 15-1 record and ultimately a berth in the Super Bowl, only to find himself at 4-6 this year, having just 14 interceptions compared to the 35 last year. But I do feel compelled to come to the defense of Cam Newton in this particular sense. When we think about the year that Cam Newton has had, when we think about some of the mistakes that he has made, perhaps it's time to ask ourselves, is it him that we should actually be looking at, or is it the rest of us? You see, in the aftermath of all of this stuff involving Colin Kaepernick, kneeling for the national anthem, being seen as a divisive presence within the National Football League and the sports world, assisting and highlighting the divide that exists in this country, clearly not doing too many people any favors, what has Cam Newton really been guilty of? He's been guilty of trying to do exactly the opposite. Yeah, some people might decry it, some people might lament it, some people might get on him for the fact that at times he seems too busy and too interested in pleasing and appeasing others that he ends up doing exactly the opposite. My point is, as one of the preeminent superstars in this game, despite the struggles this year, doesn't he deserve some credit for trying? He's not getting in trouble with the law. He's handling his business to the best of his ability. He's taking a shrapnel of criticism for something I believe GM Dave Gettleman deserves more than anybody else, because he's the one that reneged on an offer that he made to Josh Norman and let him walk away, knowing good and damn well he did not have anybody to replace Josh Norman. And Cam Newton, the face of the franchise, has been left to stomach all of that. But in the throes of all of that, in the face of all of that criticism, what does he do? He comes out there and tries to do the best he can while appeasing so many others. Perhaps we should take a step back and appreciate him for his effort in that regard, instead of condemning him for it, knowing that he has so much more of a career to look forward to. Just a thought. Just a thought.
And he says he feels humbled. Final Take, it never disappoints. If you missed any of the final takes from this week, go to our Facebook and Twitter pages. We'll post these segments there daily. Feel free to chime in on the conversation. Stephen A. Max, all of you have an awesome weekend. We'll see you Monday.